TFA fam, thank you for joining us. Apologies for the delay. Obviously, we didn't go last night. A little bit late getting to it tonight, but we are here. And unlike the past few weeks, we finally have the injury bug has hit. So obviously got that to talk about, Kev. Let's waste no time. Hope you had a good week 4, but let's talk about the quarterbacks that you're looking to stream and or pick up for week 5.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gross week, if you will, just in terms of like matchup wise. But I think starting off, if Jared Goff is available in any league you're in, I would look at it. It's 53%. It's right there at that cutoff for me. They do get a really good matchup this week against New Orleans, and or excuse me, again against New England. Wrong, new team. Anyways, but New England has not been very good this year. They are top 10 in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback. And, right now, I mean, I was really kind of surprised Jared Goff is weak. He just completed 26 passes for 370 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that was without Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift in that game against Seattle. And so, I mean, he looked really good. That was the biggest shootout of the entire weekend, 48-45, just absolute barn burner. You pretty much had to stack that game in DFS to print money. So we were on a lot of those pieces. But Jared Goff, I think, is a very viable option moving forward. And not to mention, they're going to be getting Jameson Williams probably back after their week 6 bye. And so just more firepower coming to that offense. So really like Jared Goff. And that's just even more of a long-term ad, not just for a streaming option. So moving forward, Geno Smith. Now, this isn't a great matchup against New Orleans this week. He's rostered in 13% of leagues, but he has looked really good so far to start this season. Completed 23 passes for 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and has now thrown for 300 yards in back-to-back weeks. Like I said, this isn't a great matchups. However, after this week, like if you're in like after this week, they get Arizona at LA Chargers at home against the Giants and at Arizona again over the next 4 weeks. So really, I mean, 3 of those 4 teams are very exploitable matchups in terms of passing offense or passing defenses. So Geno Smith, not something I thought we would be talking about in 2022, but he has looked really, really good so far to start the year. And so I think he's a viable option. Next up, we have Jameis Winston. If he's able to make it back this week, he missed last week, but they get the same Seattle team, and that defense is just so bad. And so I think Jameis Winston would make a lot of sense as a streaming option this week, only rostered in 36% of leagues. And then you have Teddy Bridgewater, who is rostered in only 2% of leagues. We know Tua has already been ruled out for week 5. He completed 14 of 23 passes for 193 yards and a touchdown. They get the Jets this week. Very good matchup there. And obviously having, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is something that's definitely going to help, him as a passer. So he is always kind of thin because he's not something that's going to take a lot of deep targets or anything like that. But with the weapons he has, I think they could find a couple scores. So I don't mind him in deeper formats. And then you have this game against the Titans and the Washington football team. And you have 2 teams here that rank inside the top 10 in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback. So I think on either side of the ball, really, you want to go with, whether it's Carson Wentz or Ryan Tannehill. It's just with Ryan Tannehill, he's only has 1 game over 30 pass attempts so far this year, but he's still managed to put up 15 or more fantasy points in 3 of those 4 games. So I think he is very game script dependent and see how this game turns out. But Washington does allow the 7th most fantasy points, and Tennessee allows the 8th most fantasy points. So those are kind of all the quarterbacks. It's kind of gross. I get it. But, for me, if it's Jared Goff and then kind of, then just kind of pick your poison after that for quarterbacks this week.
Who would have thought? Moving on to the week 5 running back waiver wire ads. I did have Mike Boone as my top ad. Now, we just got news a little while ago that Latavius Murray has been signed to Denver off of the Saints practice squad. Latavius looked good, I thought. 65 yards on 11 total touches, 12 total touches, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. I know he had 1 reception, the rest were carries. But I think that has a little bit more to do with the fact of having next to no depth at the running back position. I still think Mike Boone is should still be up there in terms of a must add, priority ad kind of guy, just because, we saw him out snap Melvin Gordon this past game. Now, was that to do with, some of the fumbles he's been losing? He has lost 4 fumbles on the season on, I think, like 45 total touches. So I still think he needs to be rostered, but he does take, loses a little bit of that running back luster with Latavius Murray. And then on the flip side of that, if you're in a deep league, say 14 team league, even 12 team, because, running back has been gross this year, I think Latavius Murray is definitely a name to keep an eye on. And let's not forget, let's put some respect on the name of Mike Boone, who definitely carried some fantasy managers to some playoff wins and maybe even a championship a few years ago. So still got to give a shout out to Mike Boone. Moving on is going to be Tyler Algier. He's available in over 80% of ESPN leagues. Cordero Patterson is now on IR, along with Damian Williams, who hit IR, I believe, in week 1 or 2. So that makes Williams available to come off of IR and play in week 6, which is why Algier was, a touch below Boone for me previous to this Latavius Murray news, just because I think that backfield could get crowded again. We're not entirely sure how long Patterson is going to be out. We know for sure it's going to be 4 weeks, but we don't know if he's going to miss any time after that. Look good on the touches that he did get. He was someone that Kevin and I liked, as a rookie coming in. So it's going to be interesting to see how they split the touches there. There's some other names in that backfield I'm going to touch on here in a minute, but Tyler Algier is going to be that next clear-cut ad. And then the other one here is Brian Robinson, available in 63% of ESPN leagues. I think he's obviously going to get talked about a bunch this week, but I think this backfield is just going to be a mess going forward. Obviously we still have J.D. McKissick factoring in. Antonio Gibson still going to be there. He's still worth picking up, like I said, with how gross the RB position has been. But I don't know that he's someone we're going to be looking at in terms of like, okay, he's a consistent low-end RB2, high-end flex option. But again, with the way that running back has gone this year, absolutely worth an ad, especially in 12-team leagues and higher. And then after that, just some handcuff stash kind of guys. Isaiah Pacheco looking good, man, looking good. He saw some increased opportunities with KC controlling that game the entire time against Tampa. And with those increased opportunities, he did what he did week 1 when he got extra run when the Chiefs were controlling the game against the Raiders. No, against Arizona week 1. Average over 5 yards per carry. Again, look explosive. Certainly worth stashing. In 12-team leagues and higher. Jerick McKinnon on the other side of that, I still think he's worth a stash as well, because if something were to happen to CEH, I don't see Pacheco becoming, some 70% opportunity workhorse back. McKinnon's still been getting run, although it is worth noting that on this past game, he saw his fewest snaps in terms of percent of the team snaps, and also had his fewest opportunities as well. So maybe that's a signal that Pacheco could potentially be overtaking McKinnon for that RB2 spot, which would I think would put Pacheco in that priority ad for me. But again, I don't know how much of that was on the game script for that. And then on the other side of that game, Rachaad White played 38% of the snaps against KC. That was his highest mark for him through the first 4 weeks. I think this, again, was more of a game script related type of thing than anything to do with Fournette necessarily. The Bucs literally could not get anything going on the ground, and then they fell behind way too much, so they just completely abandoned the run game in that game. But it's been clear from even week 1, whenever we saw Fournette go out toward the end of the game, that Rachaad White was that next guy up. So if anything happens to Fournette, it's going to be Rachaad White seeing a hefty amount of looks in that case. The other name to note here for the Atlanta backfield is Caleb Huntley. He was a UDFA last year, played just 12 snaps in week 4, but he had 10 carries on those snaps, went 10 for 56 and 1 with those. So again, deeper leagues, definitely worth a look there until we kind of see how this snap share and the opportunities are going to shake out between him and Algier, and then Avery Williams is there as well. And then outside of that, just looking at some guys to stash, looking at handcuff type guys, Kenny Gainwell, Samaje Perine, guys like that. Then obviously what I mentioned earlier from Latavius Murray.
Yeah, I think actually Pacheco and Rachaad White, if they're available in any league, I would be definitely looking to add them. Pacheco looked really good. He just runs so violently. Like
Yeah.
Like he's just trying to absolutely run you over every single time he runs the football. So he definitely is the clear backup to CEH in my opinion. McKinnon's still going to work in as the pass catcher, third down back. But Pacheco is certainly somebody that I would look at, and he's rostered less than 20% of league, so I do like that. So let's move over to the wide receiver position, and again, not a lot of excitement here, but there are some names here that I think we should definitely be taking a look at. For me, I think it's Alec Pierce. He's only rostered less than 5% of leagues, but he hauled in 4 passes on 6 targets for 80 yards against the Titans. Has 11 targets over the past 2 weeks, and I think he started to cement himself as the wide receiver 2 in this Colts offense. Now, this Colts offense has been just disgusting so far to start this year, really, to be honest with you. They haven't been able to get the running game going, which has really hurt this offense. And now, Jonathan Taylor's status is up in the air for this week. And so, if he's able to play on Thursday night. And so I just don't really know what to do really with a lot of this offense. But Alec Pierce, 5%. If they can get the running game going here, I do think Alec Pierce makes a lot of sense moving forward. I think he could end up being somebody that's like a flex option. He really flashed in camp. Somebody that a lot of people talked about a lot about. He did get hurt there and missed a week, but this week I think over the last 2 weeks he's really shown that I think he is the true wide receiver too. And the Paris Campbell experiment is probably absolutely over. Not that it ever really got started, but the hype can I think end now. But moving on, let's talk about Josh Reynolds. Only rostered in 20% of leagues. Another good week. Caught 7 of 8 targets for 81 yards and a touchdown. He has now seen 18 targets over the last 2 games. I don't know if Amon-Ra St. Brown plays this week. I would bet on the status that he probably does not play, and neither does DeAndre Swift. They have a bye week coming up, week 6. So if not, I think this matchup against the Patriots, Josh Reynolds is somebody that I think you can kind of lock in as a low end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type option. And then from there, I still have Jacoby Myers on here. He's only rostered at 43% of leagues. I think he has a chance to return this week after missing the last 2 weeks with a knee injury. Obviously they're playing the Lions, not a matchup you're overly worried about on the defensive side. So even with Brian Hoyer at quarterback, I think Jacoby Myers would be somebody that I would look to roster because he is clearly the best wide receiver they have, and I think he steps right back into that big role of seeing a lot of targets. Jameson Williams, I have him on here because I think he is going to return here very soon. It sounds like there's a lot of he actually could return this week. It's because he started the year on the pup, and so he could actually return week 5. But I would bet that he returns week 7 and makes his NFL debut here. It's with a lot of the rookies and how well they played so far this year. I think we kind of forget that this is a top 15 draft pick from this year's draft. And I think somebody that could step in and be a big contributor to this offense, even once Amon-Ra St. Brown returns, I think he could be the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. And as good as this offense has looked, I think he makes for a lot of sense and somebody that could be that kind of second half breakout star. So Jameson Williams rostered less than 30% of Yahoo leagues is somebody that I really like. Rondell Moore, I have down here, and at a spot that it's just he's never done anything in the NFL, and it's always been hype. I mean, he's rostered 18% of leagues. He returned this past week, 3 receptions on 5 targets for 11 yards. Like I said, this is very much a speculative ad as somebody that's never really done anything. DeAndre Hopkins should be back here in a couple of weeks once the suspension is over. It's just this offense hasn't looked very good. I'm just not all that excited about it. But if this offense can figure it out and kind of get things going in the right direction, especially once DeAndre Hopkins returns, there was a lot of talk about Rondell Moore stepping into the Christian Kirk role that he played last year. If that's the role he gets, he did see more targets than Greg Dortch, 5 to only 1 to Greg Dortch this past week as well. So Rondell Moore, more of a speculative ad. The same thing with Khalil Shakur, but I actually think that he could end up being somebody that we look at a priority ad because of all the injuries the Bills wide receiver room has right now. He saw 2 receptions on 2 targets for 23 yards. However, Jameson Crowder is now going to be out for a while. And then you have Isaiah McKenzie, who also suffered a concussion in that game. So I think that you could be seeing him in for a big jump in playing time this week. He ran 9 routes on 15 snaps last week as well. And so I think he could actually be a guy who is the starting slot wide receiver on the Bills, and that is absolutely something we want access to. So if Crowder is definitely going to be out, but if McKenzie is also out, I think he would be like a very startable wide receiver 3/wide receiver 4 option for a lot of people. So I do think Khalil Shakur is definitely somebody we should be looking at, but it's also probably more of a short term ad because Isaiah McKenzie will be back as well. So Then from there, you have Donovan Peoples-Jones, 8%, 9 targets again. I just don't know how much you're ever going to be able to trust him on a week-to-week basis. He did see 9 targets this week. He saw 11 targets, I believe, week one. I think in matchups that you could probably expect him to be playing from behind, he's going to see a lot more opportunities. And this week they get the Chargers, and that very well could be the case here, especially as banged up as this Browns defense is as well, that he could see more targets, but he's just going to be hard to trust on a week-to-week basis. Sky Moore looks like he might be starting to carve out a little bit more of a role here in this offense. He did see 4 targets, which is the most he's seen all year. He also played 28% of the snaps. If you watched that game last night, you saw he routinely got separation in this, on this offense. And so I actually think that he's somebody that I would definitely be looking to stash on my team because could be a guy that really takes over in the second half. But Cole Hardman just doesn't really seem to be it. Much more of a gadget type guy. And even MVS really hasn't played very well so far to start this season. So Sky Moore could end up being the guy that ends up by this season's end is the wide receiver 2 in this offense. So if he's out there, I'm adding Sky Moore anywhere I possibly can. And so those are kind of the guys. And you have Jamal Agnew, who actually had a good game this week. Zay Jones was out in this game. So he, the guy from last year who kind of came out of nowhere that we all really talked a lot about is back. Jamal Agnew is I guess he's going to be a thing now. Saw 2 touchdowns in this game. A much improved Jaguars offense. So, if Zay Jones is out again, I think you could look at Jamal Agnew as another type of stash as well here, or somebody that you could look to play in a pinch. So, especially with bye week starting to begin next week. So, those are kind of the wide receivers we're looking at.
Jamal Agnew. I thought we were done with that, but apparently not. Let's wrap it up with the week 5 tight end streams. It's getting it's starting to get to the point already where it's getting a little gross out here with the tight ends. But kicking things off is going to be Tyler Conklin. I thought we were going to see Conklin kind of slip out of fantasy football relevancy with Zach Wilson coming back, just because I wasn't expecting this team to be dropping back 50 times per game like they were with Flacco under helm. Now they were more balanced, but Conklin still saw 5 targets, caught 3 of them for over 50 yards, played 80% of the snaps. So I think we can continue to keep looking at him. Logan Thomas, same thing as it was last year, same talking points this year, playing a bunch of snaps, running a bunch of routes, and he's getting targets. At the tight end spot, there's really nothing else that we can ask for. Now we have Jahan Dotson with a hamstring injury, so that could potentially open up even more looks for him. And then the last 2 to mention here, guys we've been talking about with in terms of streaming, feels like all year. But Robert Tonyan, he's tied to the best quarterback in this list, so he's always viable. And then Irv Smith played his highest snap share last week. Didn't really amount to much. Only saw 4 targets. I think got 2 or 3 of them. Didn't have a ton of yards either. But with Njoku now moving well out of this list, and I do not expect him to be back on any type of tight end streaming list. It's getting a little gross out there for tight ends, but those are 4 guys that you could look to stream for week 5. Kev, anything else, buddy?
No, pour one out for Javonte Williams. I hate to see it for him. He's, obviously I am the Javonte Williams stan, have been since he came out of college. Really hate to see it. And it really was weird because I was just looking at the play, like it was nothing there that I'm not a doctor, obviously, but there was nothing like that normal stuff you would typically see. So I don't know. And there was a lot of speculation from the people that are doctors that do some of the stuff for fantasy football. There was mostly, it could be an ACL, but more than likely it's not. It's this, but obviously it ended up being that. So just sucks because even next year when he comes back, he'll probably be ready for training camp or sometime close to that. But we all know it usually takes a couple of years for them to really return to the guy that they was. So just a shame, especially whenever it looked like this past week that they were really starting to turn it over to him, that this was going to be his backup. Because I think he, in the first half before the injury happened, he was definitely the guy. And I think it was 2 or 3 series into the game before Melvin Gordon even saw a single touch in that game. And so, I don't know, just sucks to lose something like that. But we've been lucky. We really haven't had many major injuries so far to start this year. So this is obviously the first one. And it's kind of a big blow to people that drafted him, obviously. So hopefully, you either had somebody like Tyler Algier, or you can draft, or you can pick him up, because that's who I would be looking at if it was up to me. Because I know there's a lot of situations there with Tyler Algier that that I know they all split touches, Caleb Huntley and everything like that. But with Damian Williams returning, but I think Tyler Algier is definitely the best running back they have on that roster right now. And I think you could see them really shift more to him, kind of like what we saw with Damian Pierce, right? For the first couple of weeks, it was, especially that first week, it was still Rex Burkhead, but Damian Pierce has now taken over this backfield, and he is the clear RB1 in that backfield now. And so I think we could see something like that similar for Tyler Algier. And it was also good to see him get a little more, get it utilized a little bit in the passing game too. So that's kind of what I got there for that. Hope everybody, hits that like and subscribe button. We got a lot of content coming again this week. We'll have our weekly rankings coming out Wednesday morning. They'll start to come out, and then we'll go live Wednesday for our Start Sit show. DFS DJ Nation comes Thursday, and then we have the props and everything else. So keep it locked in here. Appreciate everybody checking out the channel. Be sure to head over to the Discord if you want to, looking for a fantasy community to ask any questions, trades, waivers, whatever. We're always there rocking with you guys there. So appreciate everybody rocking with us. We will catch you on the next one. Have a great night.